What happens when a Hollywood star, whose charisma captivates millions, faces a host who isn't afraid to ask tough questions? This moment on Gayle King's show went down in television history, leaving the audience in shock and social media ablaze. No one was prepared for what unfolded that evening when Will Smith took a seat on the studio couch to promote his new film. What began as a routine interview quickly spiraled into a dramatic confrontation that left everyone speechless. The CBS studio buzzed with anticipation. Bright spotlights bathed the stage in warm light, reflecting off the glossy floor. The hum of microphone checks and the quiet chatter of technicians mingled with the excited murmurs of the audience, eagerly awaiting the star's appearance. A large screen behind the stage displayed clips from Will Smith's new blockbuster, a sci-fi thriller where he played a charismatic scientist saving the world from disaster. The mostly female audience hummed with excitement, clutching their phones, ready to capture every moment. Gayle King, as always, looked impeccable, an elegant deep blue suit, flawless hair, and that piercing gaze that could disarm anyone. Her reputation as a no-nonsense journalist who wasn't afraid to tackle sensitive topics made her show a place where stars either shone or stumbled. Beside her sat co-host Amy Robach, known for her softer demeanor and attempts to smooth over tense moments. Amy nervously shuffled papers on the desk, as if sensing that the evening would be anything but ordinary. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gayle began, her voice booming through the studio, "we have a very special guest tonight. A man who needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. The star of the new film Last Horizon, Oscar winner, the one and only Will Smith." The audience erupted in applause. The studio doors swung open, and Will Smith strode in with his signature smile, wide, genuine, the kind that made everyone in the room feel like an old friend. Dressed in a sleek black suit with an open white shirt, his movements were easy but confident. Raising a hand, he waved to the crowd, and they responded with even louder cheers. Cameras hummed, zooming in on his face on the screens, while producers in the control room grinned, knowing the ratings for this episode would be through the roof. Will settled onto the couch, crossing his legs, and immediately cracked a joke. "Gayle, I heard you're in the mood for tough questions tonight. Well, I'm ready, so don't hold back." The audience laughed, and Amy Robach exhaled in relief, casting a quick glance at Gayle. But Gayle only smiled, a smile that was both warm and faintly ominous. "Oh, Will, you know I love to dig deep," she replied, winking at the audience. "But first, tell us about Last Horizon. This is your big return to sci-fi, right?" Will lit up, his eyes sparkling. He began talking about the film, the complexity of his role, and how he portrayed a character balancing hope and despair. His voice was earnest, his gestures open. The audience listened, rapt, some even jotting down notes, as if Will were giving an acting masterclass. But the atmosphere in the studio began to shift. Gayle, who had been listening attentively, suddenly leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Will, that's all very interesting," she interrupted, her tone sharpening. "But let's talk about something else. You always present yourself as the positive guy, the family man, the beacon of light. Don't you think that's a bit hypocritical?" The studio fell silent. Will's smile froze, but he quickly regained his composure. "Hypocritical?" he echoed, tilting his head slightly. "Gayle, you're gonna have to explain where you're going with this. I'm open to the conversation." The audience gave a nervous chuckle, but the tension in the room was palpable. Amy Robach gripped her pen tightly, her eyes darting between Will and Gayle. In the control room, producers exchanged worried glances, one whispering quietly, "She's doing it again." Gayle didn't back down. "I'm talking about how you always seem so perfect. All these stories about your family, your motivational speeches. But we all know things aren't always so rosy behind the scenes. Take your comments on cancel culture, for instance. You've said it stifles creativity, but you're not shy about speaking out when it suits you. So, where's the truth, Will?" The silence in the studio became almost deafening. Someone in the audience gasped softly, and a camera operator instinctively zoomed in on Will's face. His eyebrows raised slightly, but he remained calm. "Gayle," he began, his voice steady but laced with tension. I don't claim to be perfect. I'm human, just like everyone else. But if you're asking about cancel culture, I'll say this. I believe in dialogue, not judgment. You want to talk about it? Let's talk. The audience erupted in applause, but Gayle only smiled, as if sensing a crack in his armor. Oh, we'll talk, Will, she said, leaning back in her chair. But first, tell me, don't you think your career lately has been coasting on your charisma? Is this new film just another way to remind the world you're still here? This time, murmurs of disapproval rippled through the audience. Amy Roback opened her mouth to speak but quickly closed it, shooting Gayle a panicked look. Will clenched his fists, his jaw tightening, but he still held his ground. My career? He repeated, his voice lower now. Gayle, I've been in this industry for over 30 years. I've done everything: comedies, dramas, action films, even animated movies. If you think I'm coasting on charisma, maybe you haven't been watching my films. The audience erupted again, louder this time, more emotional. Someone even shouted, Tell her, Will! But Gayle wasn't fazed. She leaned in closer, her eyes gleaming. Oh, I've watched, Will. But let's be real. You dodge the tough questions. For example, why do you so rarely speak out on issues affecting your community? You could be a voice for so many, but you choose to play heroes on screen instead of being one in real life. This time, the studio went utterly still. The cameras hummed, capturing every moment. Amy Roback finally spoke up, her voice trembling. Gayle, maybe we could go back to the film? Will, tell us how you prepared for the role. But Gayle raised a hand, silencing her. No, Amy, let's give Will a chance to answer. He loves dialogue, right, Will? Will looked at Gayle, his eyes narrowing. He slowly straightened his shoulders, as if preparing for battle. The audience held its breath, sensing that a moment that would go down in history was near. Gayle, he said, his voice quiet but piercing. You think you have the right to sit here and judge how I live my life? The studio erupted. Some clapped, others filmed on their phones, and the producers in the control room whispered frantically. Amy Roback looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. And Gayle just smiled, as if this was exactly what she wanted. Oh, Will, she said, her voice sweet but venomous. This show is about truth. I just want you to be honest with us. What happened next shocked everyone. The CBS studio was on the verge of exploding. The tension between Will Smith and Gayle King had reached a boiling point, and everyone in the room could feel that this moment would become legendary. Cameras hummed, capturing every move, every glance. The audience, which had been cheering enthusiastically just minutes ago, now sat in tense silence, clutching their phones, ready to record what they sensed would go down in television history. Amy Roback, the co-host, looked like she wanted to disappear, her fingers nervously gripping the edge of the desk. In the control room, producers whispered to each other, one grabbing his head and muttering, "This is a disaster, or a ratings goldmine." Will Smith sat on the couch, his posture tense but controlled. His eyes, usually sparkling with warmth and humor, now burned with quiet anger. Gayle King, by contrast, appeared calm, her smile almost predatory, as if she relished every second of this showdown. Her last remark, about her show being about truth, hung in the air like a challenge. Truth? Will repeated, his voice low but piercing. He leaned forward slowly, resting his elbows on his knees, and locked eyes with Gayle. All right, Gayle. Let's talk about truth. But first, tell me, why do you think you can sit here and throw accusations without knowing what I do behind the scenes? Do you know how much I work with young people? How many foundations I support? How many people I inspire without broadcasting it? The audience erupted in applause, but it was uneven. Some clapped loudly, others hesitantly, as if unsure whose side to take. Gayle raised a hand, calling for silence, her smile widening. Will, I'm not saying you do nothing, she replied, her tone soft but laced with menace. I'm saying you take the easy road. You play heroes on screen, but when it comes to real issues, racism, inequality, the cancel culture you love to talk about, you stay on the sidelines. Why? Afraid to tarnish that perfect image? The silence in the studio became deafening. A camera zoomed in on Will's face, catching the moment his jaw tightened and his eyes narrowed. Amy Roback tried to intervene, her voice trembling. Maybe we could talk about how Will prepared for his role in Last Horizon? That's interesting, right? But neither Will nor Gayle paid her any attention. Will leaned back on the couch, crossing his arms over his chest. He looked calm, but everyone in the room could sense it was the calm before the storm. Gayle, he said, his voice quieter now but each word cutting through the air like a blade. You think you know me? You think a few minutes in this studio give you the right to judge my life, my career, my values? You accuse me of avoiding issues, but what about you? You sit here, throwing provocations for ratings and calling it truth. The audience gasped. Someone in the back shouted, "Whoa!" Cameras darted between Will and Gayle, trying to capture every moment. A producer in the control room frantically pressed his headset. "Don't cut away! Film everything!" Amy Roback looked like she might cry, her hands trembling as she tried to speak again. "Guys, let's just calm down." But Gayle wasn't listening. She leaned even closer to Will, her eyes gleaming with defiance. "Will, I'm not throwing provocations. I'm asking the questions the audience wants to hear. You said you love dialogue. So why are you dodging the answers? Or maybe you just don't like it when someone challenges your perfect reputation?" That was too much. Will stood abruptly from the couch, and the studio froze. His movements were slow but deliberate, as if he'd made a decision he wouldn't reverse. He adjusted his jacket, cast a quick glance at the audience, then turned back to Gayle. When he spoke, his voice was calm but filled with a strength that made everyone hold their breath. "Gayle," he said, "I came here to talk about my film. I came to share with people what I love, art, stories, inspiration. But you decided to turn this into a trial. You want to know who I am? I'm a man who tries every day to be better, for my family, my community, the world. And you know what? I don't need to prove that to you or anyone else in this studio." The audience erupted in applause, loud and heartfelt this time. Some even stood, shouting, "Bravo, Will!" But Will wasn't done. He turned to the audience, his eyes burning with passion. "I believe in the power of art to change the world. I believe the stories we tell can inspire people, give them hope, make them laugh or cry. And I won't let anyone, not you, Gayle, not anyone, diminish that by accusing me of not doing enough. I do what I can in my own way. And if that doesn't meet your standards, that's your problem, not mine." The studio exploded with cheers. People leapt to their feet, some wiping away tears. Amy Roback looked stunned, her hands shaking as she tried to find words but failed. Gayle, for the first time that evening, looked rattled. Her smile vanished, and she pressed her lips tightly together, as if searching for a response. But Will didn't give her the chance. "I'm done," he said, his voice quiet but resolute. He turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing loudly on the glossy floor. Cameras scrambled to follow him, and the audience continued to applaud, torn between shock and admiration. The studio doors slammed shut behind him, and silence descended. Gayle finally recovered, forcing a smile. "Well, that was unexpected," she said, trying to regain control. "But you know, that's live television. We'll be back after the break." The cameras cut to commercial, but the audience didn't rush to leave. People frantically posted videos from their phones, and clips with the hashtag Will Smith walks out began flooding social media. Producers in the control room looked torn between celebration and panic. Amy Roback whispered softly, "Oh God, what have we done?" The moment Will Smith walked out of the studio went viral before the commercial break even ended. Clips of his speech spread across Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, racking up millions of views in hours. Some called Will a hero for standing up for his dignity. Others accused him of being overly sensitive. Gayle King faced backlash too. Some praised her boldness, while others criticized her for crossing personal boundaries. In the days that followed, the media buzzed with debate. Some outlets wrote that Will had shown strength of character. Others claimed he was dodging tough questions. Will himself posted a brief statement on social media. "I believe in art. I believe in people. And I believe we can be better. Thank you to everyone who supports." The post garnered millions of likes, but the conversation didn't die down. As for Gayle, she later said in an interview that her goal was to uncover the truth, but many felt her methods were too aggressive. The CBS show saw record ratings, but Gayle's reputation took a hit, especially among Will's fans. This conflict became more than just a television moment. It sparked questions. Where's the line between journalistic candor and personal attacks? Does a star have the right to choose how and when to take a stand? And can art be as impactful as activism? What do you think of this conflict? Did Will do the right thing by walking out? Did Gayle have the right to ask those questions? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to catch more stories like this.